Hello and welcome to AWS Partner Online Series on Microsoft Workloads, Migrate with Confidence. My name is Anil Sharma. I'm an architect at AWS, and I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. Now, the topic for today's webinar is how RateGain is set to increase its agility, scalability, and resilience by migrating to cloud. It is my pleasure to introduce our two speakers for today, Gautam Ghai. Gautam is the co-founder and chief executive officer at SourceFuse and stands at the forefront of fastest moving technology industry trend, cloud computing. Throughout his 18 years of experience, Gautam has built a reputation for developing business strategies, incubating new business models, and building out channel programs. Embracing core values of integrity, innovation, and growth, he consistently strengthens SourceFuse modernization-led cloud migration with tomorrow's digital-ready solutions. Our second speaker for today's webinar is Vedant Singh. Vedant is the Director of Strategic Accounts and Marketing in SourceFuse. He has an experience of 10 plus years, with majority of that being in healthcare and life sciences industry. Prior to SourceFuse, he was the head of healthcare life sciences for India geography at Tech Mahindra. With SourceFuse, he's invested in growing the company and creating a global presence for the brand. With that, let's start our today's webinar. It's over to you, Vedant.
Thanks, Anil. Thank you so much. I think today's subject is going to be very interesting. It's something of a buzzword in almost all industries across the globe, cloud migration and its benefits. Today, our talk will be centered around RateGain's cloud migration journey from on-prem data centers onto the AWS cloud. RateGain is one of the best travel and hotel software companies that provide a new age travel technology solutions to hotels, OTAs, airlines, tour operators, vacation, and more. And to begin with, we'll understand the concerns RateGain was facing on their on-prem infra, and more importantly, the impacts of those concerns on their business, which triggered them to look for a cloud provider. We will then go in depth about RateGain's journey so far, what's the plan of action, and what are the potential benefits for RateGain. And of course, what made RateGain select SourceFuse for this modernization journey, specifically on AWS Cloud. Gautam will then give us an introduction to SourceFuse, its niche area of specialization, Microsoft Workloads migration to AWS, and how AWS is the most popular, secure, and reliable cloud, making the Windows you love better. I also want to mention, just as Anil did, I think towards the end of the webinar, we'll have a 15-minute Q&A where everybody gets a chance to share their thoughts and ideas and questions with Gautam and myself. With this, let's quickly dive in. Gautam, since you've been so deeply involved in RateGain's journey, what would you describe as the most affected areas or the triggers for RateGain for moving to the cloud?
Thanks, Vedant. Thank you for introducing the topic and also giving us an overview of what we'll be doing today. RateGain is a sort of technology-heavy enterprise that has been kind of iterating and developing its core product for several years now. And their predicament is quite typical of companies that are in this enterprise-based sort of development lifecycle that they're in. They typically, RateGain has multitude of infrastructure. Some of it is on-prem, some of it is on cloud. They have obviously a lot of technical debt, like I said, because the application has been developed over time. So some of it, large parts of it are monolithic, and not really designed to take advantage of today's sort of containerization or serverless-based technologies. And also, as typical of .NET and .NET-based applications, they are large sort of fixed licensing costs that they have to worry about. Another side effect that kind of comes in with this sort of an infrastructure is security, right? Because you've got various environments and various points of exposure, etc., which is they're kind of loosely coupled, which gives you a large chances of more failure. Yeah. I also want to I think in conversations with them, I think the other problem they had is the complexity they have in actually deploying new code because of aforementioned the array of infrastructure they have. So I think the combination of all of this and their need to be really agile, considering today's scenario where they are, and and their explosive growth has really made them look for a partner that can really take them to the next level in their technology journey.
That's very interesting, Gautam. I think it will also be interesting for our audience to know how these specific concerns are addressed by AWS, which eventually we know became RateGain's choice amongst so much of competition in the cloud provider space. Would be great if you can share some points around RateGain's selection of AWS cloud in specific.
Sure. So as you may well know, the AWS cloud is by far the most sort of mature and cloud solution out there. In fact, anecdotally, the Windows was running on cloud first with AWS, and Microsoft did not even have a cloud offering. So actually, cloud and AWS, Windows and AWS predates Azure. So because of that, because of that journey and because of that time that AWS has had, has led to a lot of platform maturity compared to even sort of Microsoft's own cloud offering, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
This has also led to a wide variety of options available with AWS. For example, a choice of database, choice of serverless architectures, which allow us to build Microsoft-based workloads in a more flexible fashion and a secure and scalable fashion on AWS. Also, as an enablement situation, AWS has a very, very aggressive sort of a competent Windows workloads program that helps enterprises take this step and works with partners like us across the globe to help them with that journey. This has obviously a few kind of impacts. When you get on a cohesive, scalable infrastructure, you get agility, you get cost savings. You're able to be more innovative because you're not really focused. You have a lot of freedom from licensing and infrastructure management and stuff like that. And last but not the least, AWS is extremely high availability. I think it's the best in class. And of course, being able to put together a more secure and compliance-oriented environment is kind of very, very attractive as well.
Right. That's very valuable information, Gautam. So I think we all knew that AWS is the preferred choice for cloud, but it was insightful to understand why companies should migrate their Microsoft workloads on AWS too. I guess it's truly their cloud maturity and their flexibility compared to the other cloud providers that make them the reliable and the resilient choice. That's great to know. I think I'm going to ask you a slightly different or a difficult question now, Gautam. Why did RateGain select SourceFuse? I guess what I'm trying to understand is why not any other AWS partner? Why SourceFuse in specific?
I don't know why you think it's a difficult question, Vedant, but I'll try to answer it anyways.
Sure.
A few reasons. I think the primary of those is the fact that we really kind of matched what they were looking for. RateGain wasn't looking for a simple lift and shift arrangement. RateGain was really looking for a technology company that understood their goals. What were they trying to get to? What was their product lifecycle looking like? What are the pain points they were having? And the genesis of SourceFuse is product development on the cloud. So we have a very wide variety of tools, understanding, and experience at our disposal that allows us to understand the journey of product companies and where they're at. So we take a view around modernization when we're doing the migration experience, which is what I think really attracted at the core of it. My conversations with their team were more about what their end goals were from an application perspective than just about cost savings and moving to the cloud. Right? They were very excited about simplifying their architecture, really, getting more efficiency on deployment, scalability,
Right.
performance, and stuff like that. They were very excited to see if they could get, down the path. They want to have a whole database freedom plan that they want to get off, in play and really move off the current sort of more license-oriented structure. The other thing is obviously going in our favor is we're a Microsoft competency partner, Workloads competency partner, which basically kind of gives us the credentials that we have the confidence of the OEM that we are able to do this, and this is not a very, very easy sort of competence to get, as you well know.
Right.
Then coming from there, like I said, not just a simple lift and shift. You have to put your money where your mouth is. So we have like the POC that we did, I think, really helped us along, where we actually did migrate a couple of their core modules. We kind of did a whole architecture exercise, showed them the efficiency that was coming in and how this could be successful. I think that was a big contributor towards this journey.
That's great. Thanks, Gautam. I think this helps our audience understand the detailed reasonings on why cloud migration is not really just the end goal. It's modernizing your infrastructure, your architecture, which can potentially multiply your cost savings. And actually, not only that, it could be the key to a much more scalable business model. Thanks, Gautam. That was quite enriching and inspiring. So now that we understand why RateGain made the choice of selecting SourceFuse's modernization services to move on to AWS in specific, help us understand what has been the journey with RateGain. Have they fully moved to the cloud already? And what essentially are the results which should be expected out of this cloud migration or cloud modernization plan?
So as far as RateGain is concerned, they're in the middle of their modernization and migration journey. We've already, like I covered earlier, they went through a cycle of actual selection where they first selected the cloud partner, and then they had a selection on the SourceFuse and who they would work with as a partner of choice. And after which, we had a whole strategy around POC and which kind of gave us a more detailed plan with sort of strict timelines and expected results. So we're somewhere in the middle of that. I would say we're about 40% through with that process, and we expect over the next quarter or so to be able to have been fully migrated onto the AWS piece. So again, I must remind you, it is not like RateGain is new to the cloud. They were kind of, some of their bits are already on, some of them are on-prem. So this is more, it's a very strategic exercise where they're now consolidating most of their large application sets, especially the reservation system, etc., onto the cloud, because of the aforementioned reasons earlier. So, just to kind of give a quick overview of what the plan looks like. So we're kind of right now in the middle of doing a modernization exercise where we're kind of going through their application sets, looking at dependencies, seeing what the which aspects need to be modernized. We have a development team which is working hand in hand with their development team to re-architect their applications, etc. Obviously, key to all of this is making sure that AWS CloudTrail is implemented to give them a lot of transparency and monitoring capabilities around what is actually happening in the application. So it's an interesting piece because, being a monolith, we have to actually go through, see where the opportunities for serverless computing as well. Where can we actually really look at the application and optimize it to use, serverless computing infrastructure as far as possible with obvious sort of benefits of using on-demand infrastructure, both from a scale point of view and a cost point of view. So we're kind of in that middle of that whole assessment and development journey right now.
Right, and that's the results, right? That's what they will be able to potentially get at the end of this entire journey.
Yeah, I mean, we're very confident of being able to make them, kind of figure out all the problems of growth that they're having right now, where they don't have to sink cost in heavy capex and data center based investments and really move to a capex OpEx model. give them the scalability they need to, because being a travel provider, right? Today, obviously, COVID notwithstanding, but there's massive amount of fluctuation that happens depending on what season you're in, which, if they signed up a new customer, because they are, at the end of the day, they're a backend provider for very, very large travel providers, and, they're the ones that enable them to give their service. So resilience is very important. You can't have downtime. So how does a company like this do this without the cloud? I don't understand. So basically, after this is done, we're really hoping that we'll be able to make them more scalable, more agile, more resilient, all with giving them more savings and a more modern application stack.
Right. And like we understood, the cost savings are not just through the lift and shift, but also through the modernization strategies like containerization and serverless computing. So that's
Absolutely.
amazing. Yeah. Gautam, I think at this point of time, it'll be great if you can also talk about and introduce SourceFuse to the audience, its offerings, and kind of give a understanding of what the Microsoft workload specialization also means to SourceFuse, and how does SourceFuse really cater to that?
Sure, I'd love to do that. So SourceFuse is a company that is currently is headquartered in Jacksonville. We have a large presence here in APAC, based out of India. We have over I think 3 delivery centers. We have in 6 global locations, as mentioned here. We have almost 250 people working as part of the SourceFuse family, and many of those are cloud certified. So in fact, Vedant, I think we need to up that number because it changes every day. We have almost 52 people who are certified now within the SourceFuse, and that number is so that's a big investment for us. We are also very strategically looking at our sort of from a competency standpoint. At what so Microsoft Workloads competency, as I mentioned, we're also a DevOps competency partner, which speaks to our modernization focus for our customers. And also a verticalized sort of competency in healthcare. We partner with other than AWS, we partner with Loopback, which is a rapid application development framework, New Relic for application monitoring, etc., and F5 is a security partner for us. So that's a little bit about us at SourceFuse.
Sure. How about the offerings, Gautam? What's the kind of main services which SourceFuse offers?
Great. Baseline, obviously, any enterprise coming to us, they are, and looking at the cloud journey, there is a migration involvement. But how we do it is different, right? We always have, like I mentioned earlier, modernization view, where we look at, how can we look at their architecture? How can we open it up? What are the integration opportunities? How can we make it more flexible? All in the while doing, looking at the whole replatforming and how do we make the whole thing more robust and business focused. One of the other, core offerings that we have is, like I mentioned, we're a product development company. So we've helped a lot of our enterprise partners become, more innovative and really have an offering around greenfield technology and product development on the cloud, where with a focus on security and scalability. SourceFuse also offers a DevOps automation consulting and implementation management service for teams that are looking to automate the deployment cycles and just become more efficient using CI/CD techniques, etc.
Right, and so the main goal or the way we kind of approach each of the problems coming our way, or the concerns which the prospects and the customers coming our way, the solution to that is more of application modernization rather than just lift and shift. Is that fair to understand?
That's accurate, yes.
And then obviously, understanding the Microsoft workload specialization, it'll be great if we can understand a bit more about that from you.
Sure. So to give you the background, AWS has a very robust competency program. And usually the reason why they have that is because they want to give confidence to their customers, and they will go work with a partner that there has been an independent verification of the partner's credentials around a particular technology skill set or a vertical skill set, depending on what the competency is about. So in this case, we're talking about a Windows workload competency, and the assessment is done by a third party, and it speaks to our capability of successfully solving customer problems, migrating and modernizing their applications with a deep insight and technology insight on Windows on the cloud on AWS. So that's what's it about. I have to say it is, in my opinion, whenever we achieve a competency, we actually truly feel like it's a big deal, because we know that it really stands for something, and it really is important within the AWS ecosystem, right? So so why is this important, right? Because it allows our customers to know that when a partner like us or SourceFuse is coming in and working with them, we'll understand the applications they're working on from a deep technical perspective. We'll be able to give them. So if I can we go back to the competency slide, please. Yeah, I think
sure.
So it just kind of, and also interestingly, give them opportunity of not, for example, SQL Server 2008 as you have on the screen. While Microsoft Azure is not going to be able to get you on the cloud, and you have to necessarily have a big capital cost in upgrading, you can run SQL Server 2008 on AWS cloud, and it is fully supported. So what competency does is allows us to give that confidence to our customers. So we have a interesting testimonial here from Shelly. So Firehouse, is to introduce, and we'll talk about this case study later, is the second largest subway chain in the United States, and we did a very interesting migration for them for their POS system, and we got them totally on the cloud on AWS. So we'll discuss that a little later. Move to the next slide.
Sure. And I think the next couple of things are more around modernization. I think that's the focus anyway. We've understood that. But how does any of the enterprises just expand their business with the help of modernization, right? Lift and shift is not the end goal, as we talked about earlier. How does modernization really help everybody or enterprises, organizations achieve much more than just a simple cloud migration lift and shift?
Thank you. So, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies that are tech focused or tech, and have been deploying applications or developing in-house applications or products for themselves. Over time, they tend to accumulate a lot of technical debt, which makes their application stacks more sort of unwieldy, harder to integrate with, higher failure points.
Yeah.
A lot of infrastructure costs in running and stuff like that. Even security is an issue. So we view the move to the cloud as an opportunity for them to reassess that entire application architecture and really see that which parts of those applications need to be modernized. Can you employ strategies like containerization to really help manage their applications better? Can you kind of use serverless technologies to see how we can make their application more agile, make their infrastructure better? So that is what the purpose of modernization is. Really kind of give the customer a review, relook, and to reimagine what their application and their structures can look like. And typically it's a journey. You don't really get into an application and say, hey, I'm going to just change the whole thing. And very importantly, you have to ensure that business as usual is carrying on. So this is actually the modernization journey has to be supportive of that fact, and is usually done in sort of in a tightly coupled fashion with the production team at the customer's end. And we have a consultative approach to really kind of help them through this journey, and we handhold them as well as provide them the skills needed to kind of cover that ground.
Right, and specific benefits associated with it. I know we're going to be talking about the a typical roadmap of what an app modernization would look like with SourceFuse, but just if you could expand a little bit more, double down on that. what's the roadmap which typically any enterprise would go through with SourceFuse. And at the end of the day, I know we've talked about the benefits of this, but what would probably be the top three, if I can say?
The top three benefits, I think, are going to be scalability is, I think, the big one, where you're not really having to have a linear progression of your infrastructure with your application, and you're kind of being able to decouple that. You need stuff like serverless to kind of have on-demand infrastructure shutdown. That's very, very important. Of course, cost efficiency is the very big one. I think security, in my mind, especially for an enterprise, is a big one, right? We've just kind of had news, I'm not going to take names, about large enterprise having problems with their on-prem infrastructure, facing security threats, etc. It's just harder for you to manage such complex infrastructure, and you should kind of, with AWS, you have that peace of mind that you have the best in the business looking at it. So I think those are the top three business, I think, advantages that an enterprise really gets from doing this move, and also doing it from a modernization perspective, right?
Right.
Covering a little bit more on the roadmap, right? Like as you've outlined here, I mean, I think I've kind of given a bit of a background earlier, but I think kind of what is really important for us to understand is that this journey is not the same for everybody, right? For certain certain companies, you may mobility may be important. For certain companies, you're looking to see how can you leverage disruptive technologies like AI and machine learning to really enhance their customer experience, right? For example, e-commerce companies today are really aggressively looking at deploying these strategies to better their customer experience and also improve the conversion from as simple things like product recommendations or automated support, etc. So it depends on who you're talking to, right? But overall, I think a mixture of these sort of tenets of modernization are important to examine. I've already, I think, spoken quite a bit about container security and containers and sort of microservices. But I think we should look at even DevOps being a crucial piece of this puzzle, right? Which allows you to kind of automate your deployment pipelines so that deployment doesn't become this big task that everybody needs to do, and it's done in an automated fashion where you have your automated test cases running. So there's a lot of validation of what's going on, right? So that, I think, really kind of gives you that efficiency you need for you to become more agile and to be able to respond to new feature requests in a fashion that is required, rather than going through a long, protracted cycle of manual deployment. Microservices, I think, is self-explanatory. Like I discussed, all of monolith applications can use that to decouple the applications, make them more resilient, make them more modern, and to allow rapid development. Cohesively, all of this is trying to make your application, more resilient, more sort of able to be sort of progressive and kind of be ready for the next 5 to 10 years as the journey kind of progresses. And that's really the core of it.
Right. Thanks, Gautam. Since we're talking about Microsoft workload specialization and then the modernization aspect of what SourceFuse brings in, are there any other case studies which might help our audience understand what SourceFuse have or different ways SourceFuse has helped more global customers? Do we have something of that sort which you can talk about?
Yeah, I do believe we have 2 or 3 examples. I think that will be beneficial, and we can talk through them. I think that will also give a more sort of illustrative look at what we've been able to do. So MTS is a healthcare company that helps life sciences. So it helps pharmacies and large pharmacy chains really manage their medical inventory. They were on a very expensive co-location, service, and they were really also hurting from a point of view of not being able to grow their application or feature set fast enough, right? So a very typical problem, like I said earlier, they had technical debt, and they were paying a lot of money to keep the application going. AWS was very, very supportive. We got an acceleration plan here. Where we did a POC. We kind of did a full migration and a modernization exercise over a period of 6 months, right? There was a 40% bottom line difference, which is huge for a business, right? Especially if your largest cost is currently your technology and infrastructure. So if you do a 40% saving, there's a marked difference in profitability and what you're able to do. Being in healthcare, there was a big increase in regulatory and compliance posture that the company had. And more so, we were able to even decrease the amount of development and maintenance effort they need, thereby even reducing the amount of people they need to staff and to kind of employ to manage and grow their application, which is like a big win-win for them, right? All in all, improving transparency, giving them a lot of security in terms of alerts going off when they need to help so that they're able to manage their SLAs with their end customers. And when your customers are pharmacy chains like Walgreens and CVS, you have extremely tight SLAs and everything. So we're able to do all of that for them.
Right. And now I think you talked about Firehouse subs earlier, but if you want to expand on that a bit.
Yeah, so they were actually really suffering when we met them. It was like a really sort of fast-paced exercise that you had to do because they had a legacy platform that they were using. It was all colo. They were having huge amounts of, like mentioned over here, denial of service attacks. They were not able to manage or grow their infrastructure. And so we kind of did a quick move, with auto scaling, etc., implemented. We put a WAF in place to help them with more securities, and that WAF, in the Q&A we'll cover a little bit more around that. But it was kind of self-learning, and we put some tech in place to make sure that it became more and more secure over time. And also because being a large customer with kind of operations across the United States, we also put in a multi-AZ environment to give them more resilience and also performance, to be able to serve them from different locations. So.
Right. That's great. And I think if there's something more in terms of migration, some other case studies, that would be fantastic too. I think what I'm trying to figure out is that there's some modernization aspects and then strategies which has helped the SourceFuse customers, specifically on the Microsoft workloads. How about something other than that? Are there some other case studies which could also probably help the audience understand more about SourceFuse?
Sure. So, BluHorn has been a long-term customer. They've been with us for a good, I think maybe over 4 or 5 years. So it's funny that we are retiring our own technical debt at this point with them and helping them with a modernization journey on code we've developed. But as a long-term technology partner and a product development partner, we work very closely with their CXO level team to help them with their journey. Initially built on PHP, now being migrated to a more modern Java stack framework. All this while we ourselves are, when first built is not on AWS, it was on Apollo. We moved it ourselves to AWS and really kind of helped them achieve some incredible numbers in terms of efficiencies, rate of deployment, and even just from a performance standpoint. So what they do is they sell royalty-based content to customers. So they're massive media companies, their customers, and these guys can go at any given point in time to, because production houses work all, 24/7, and they want to buy a piece of music. And if it's not online and the contracts are not available and they're not searchable, then you're in trouble, right? So we're able to automate a lot of that with some very cool application features like online document editing, etc., on the fly, just to be able to kind of execute their contracts in an automated fashion. So this whole journey has been very, very interesting, and it's a really great example of how as a company we've been able to relook at tech that we've made without getting too attached to it and see what that journey continues to look like, and how you come to a point every 3 or 5 years where there's a big reset, big modernization exercise that needs to happen, and we need to manage that. So I think this is a good example of that.
This is fantastic. I mean, we know that SourceFuse's niche area is healthcare life sciences industry, but so many companies ranging from media buying to restaurant chains and obviously healthcare, they've been leveraging SourceFuse's services, and they've gained 93% or up to 93% efficiency and up to 40% reduction in TCO. That's fantastic. I think I'm very sure the audience would have an understanding of the capabilities of what SourceFuse has to offer. That's fantastic. Thanks, Gautam. This was a lovely chat. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I would now like to open the floor for any questions from our audience today.
Thanks a lot for the enlightening session. It was very useful, especially around the modernization aspects of it. So thanks a lot. Gautam, thanks for your time. Vedant, thanks for your time. And like Vedant said, if you have any questions, please free to ask them now. You can use the widget on your right to ask questions, and we'll be happy to address that.
Hey, so I can see some of the questions here. So let me just read out to them. I think Gautam, this one's for you. So what are the challenges? And I'm going to read that out. What are the challenges that you see in legacy to modern applications migration, especially when you're migrating and then you're also modernizing at the same time?
Sure. I mean, basically the legacy becomes legacy over time, right? It's built with what is cutting edge then. However, over time, as I explained earlier as well, most of the things kind of either there's a lot of iterative building which makes it unoptimized, or earlier a lot it was the standard to build a monolith application, etc. And doing applying concept like separation of concerns, etc. It gets very difficult over time. So in my opinion, to really utilize cloud solutions to their fullest, we have to do a lot of decoupling implementations, and so that we ensure that we use the best of everything that is available. However, we have to also take care of building a roadmap, so that each improvement is done slowly and steadily, because this is a business as usual is not impacted. So in my opinion, modernization has to be a core part of it, and to best utilize legacy frameworks on the cloud, and cannot just be lift and shift.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks for that. Okay, so this one's, I think, fairly straightforward for you. So Samir has asked a question in terms of, is SourceFuse a product or a service provider? How would you want to classify yourself?
It's a good question. We're definitely a services company, but we're good at building products. So the service we offer is to build products. I hope that helps answer. And of course, as a journey, as we continue on, we're investing in our own platform IP as well. So
very nice. Okay, and there's another question from Venkat. In your migration strategies, you've deployed both microservices. Oh, sorry, this another question, so it went away. Yeah, you've deployed both microservices and containers. Do you need both? And that's a a tricky one, a curveball, if you will. What do you think is your
I'm going to defer to Ashish, and if for all of you who don't know Ashish, Ashish is a resident cloud genius, so I had requested him to join just to deal with curveballs like this. So Ashish, would you please take this question? Thanks.
That's a good one. Actually, hi Anil, hello, hi everyone. Yeah, so that's a good one. And then why do we need both containers and microservices? So I mean, either of one should be like kind of enough. So it's like specifically for the RateGain, we decided to move not everything in one go. So I mean, migrating to cloud has always been a journey for each and every customer. So for this specific customer, what we did, they were like few of their workload were already on containerized environment. So what we did, we migrated their containerized environment to cloud using the ECS and EKS environment over there, whatever suits better. And then we decided to basically move the background services to microservices, so that there is no like resource crunch or anything that we need to manage, even the nodes over there. So we moved those background services to microservices, so that we can have like a better architecture moving forward. That's why, I mean, it's not like that we need both, but during the journey we had both of those simultaneously at for a particular amount of time.
Cool. And guys, just to add my viewpoint there. So let's not confuse between microservices, which is actually a a paradigm of how you architect things, versus container, which is a way of doing things, right? How you package code. So the two can come together for sure. You can have microservices and containers as well. But yeah, so that's a longish topic, and I do have a couple of questions that I want to cover. So there's a question that says, speaking about legacy apps, have you had experience with off-premise high hardware dependent companies? And what was your approach if you've done that?
We have, in fact, our sort of whole case study that we're talking about right now, which is RateGain, is exactly that. It is an off-premise high hardware company, and it's a very, very high transaction based application. So so yes, the short answer is we do. And Ashish, do you want to cover some of the, perhaps you can give 1 or 2 pointers on what we take care of when we're working with a company like this, just to make sure that BAU is not impacted.
So yeah, and then I briefly mentioned that it's always like a journey. So we do many POCs before we actually migrate their workload to the cloud. So we give them an environment where they can go, they can test their workload, how is it performing, what is the performance as compared to how they were performing on the on-prem. So we basically publish all those matrices with the customer, and then once we get a go ahead, then only we migrate their production workload specifically to the cloud. So basically we take care of their production workload and do not affect their actual business.
Cool, thanks. And I think this one's an interesting one. This is from Shuchi. And I think Gautam, this one's for you, because why do you keep using the term modernization-led migration, and what's the difference between a regular migration for a Windows application?
Great,
so that's a good.
Thank you. That's a good one, and it's in fact I like to think I sort of coined that term. I keep using it because I want people to think about it separately. A regular modernization is when you take a legacy application and you do a lift and shift, where you kind of supplant it on the cloud without much core change in the application and its architecture. While a modernization-led migration is when you look at the application first, see what, like I said earlier, what are the decoupling strategies you can employ? Can you deploy microservices somewhere? And what are the other strategies you can employ to really bring that application to current state of tech, retire technical debt, so that it can leverage the cloud as far as possible, right? So that it becomes more efficient. Why that is because you get, the way cloud is of today, that's the infrastructure of today, but these applications are not designed to leverage that. So that's the core need to do it. And of course, it also makes sure you get longevity on the application, you get more scalability and security, like I covered. Those are the sort of primary differences.
I like the terms. I'm going to borrow and use that for quite some time. Then modernization-led migration.
Make it viral.
So the next one is around what kind of tools have you used for analysis of your present on-premise infrastructure when you're migrating to cloud, and what are the list of things that you plan before migrating? This one from Dhaval. So basically tools and checklists, and what kind of tools have you used? So
we
maybe
have a bunch
Ashish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Ashish is more equipped to answer that. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So basically, then we start with like a TCO calculator, which is the AWS tool to start with, so that we know how much they're spending on-prem and what would they spend once they go to the cloud, because that's the foremost thing the customer asks for. I mean, how would I be spending once I will be on the cloud? Would that be more? Would that remain the same, or that will go down? So we start with that, and then to analyze their infrastructure, to analyze their network communication, we have like Migration Hub as a centralized tool that we use, which has its own agents that we install on the infrastructure which is on-prem or maybe on some other cloud, to understand their current infra. Because what we have seen generally, even customers do not have a good inventory of their own infra. And if we go by that inventory, those Excel sheets and those like documents, we would never be able to migrate to the cloud. I mean, that's what my experience is. So that's why we are like, we take help of these tools, get the data, what is there, and then based on that data, we publish a good report which says and then what all dependencies are there which needs to be covered before we actually migrate, and what all can be moved in like one go. I mean, do we have to move like server A and server B in one go, or do we have to move, or we can just move server A and then leave behind server B and C? Once server A is stable, everything is working fine, then we'll go ahead with B and C. So we take care of like we take help of these two, Migration Hub agents, and then the TCO calculator. And then if there is a large infra also, we take we have partnered with Risk, so we take help from them as well as in terms of like tooling. So we install that, and that gives like a pretty good picture of what the current infra, but that we only use if there's like 100 or 150 plus servers which is there on-prem.
Right. No, thanks for that. And so there's another one which talks about this time it talks about how much time does it take for migrations, especially for customers like RateGain or Firehouse. How much time are you planning for, and how do you estimate that?
Yeah, I mean, RateGain, of course, we've had the advantage of doing a deep dive, a POC, etc. So, and the customer also has business concerns. So the time taken is very often dictated by what their goals are, and obviously what is physically possible. In this case, we're taking between 5 to 6 months to complete the whole application.
Okay, so that's another one, which is how simple is it to deploy monolithic applications in a lift and shift kind of scenario? This one's from Santosh, and he wants to know about that.
Ashish, you want to take that?
Yeah, see, it again depends what the application is, what all components are there. Is it like a simple 3-tier application, a web application, or maybe, I mean, it could be anything. So we basically we would first assess what the application is, what are the different components, is it using any external caching, is there any queuing mechanism or not? So I mean, so totally depends upon the complexity of the application, I would say.
Makes sense. Okay, and okay, so there's another question around how about have you faced a scenario where you have had data residency or any country specific compliance issues that you had to solve, and if AWS helped on that?
I think absolutely. I mean, Ashish can cover the details, but I'll cover the sort of compliance piece, of course, because sort of our core specialization is healthcare, and that's for us. Patient health information (PHI) is extremely important, and there are very, very tight residency laws around which country, what details, and why and how AWS helps is just because of its sheer scale. It's very easy for us to get infrastructure, the right kind of infrastructure in the country of residence, and make sure that we're compliant there. And Ashish, if you want to add on any other sort of pieces that we bring in to make sure that this happens. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't think without the cloud is even possible to really do effectively. So yeah, Ashish.
That's correct, Gautam. Without the cloud, it would have been very, very difficult if you want to like host country-specific data for the customers. So I mean, just like extending what Gautam said, there have been cases where like there's a single application, and I mean, we were working like universities and schools over there, and there are strict regulations where they have to keep the data inside the country only. The data cannot go because it's like a student data. So that is like although not that much compliant as compared to healthcare industry, but still they have a compliant that the data cannot go outside the country. So we in fact hosted the databases specific to the countries, and over there we leverage the managed services of AWS only, like RDS, and then use the DMS to keep the core data in sync. So again, like two services, DMS to keep the data in sync, RDS to host the actual data, and those data are like those databases are residing in the different regions of AWS. So I mean, had there been no different regions from AWS, we would not be. We might have to go to the other cloud, but that's not the case. Being within the AWS, using the same set of services in the different regions, we were able to like do this very, very easily. The application was basically able to handle this very easily.
Cool. So there's another question, and I'm going to slightly paraphrase that in terms of why did you choose to go ahead with AWS for what essentially is a Windows application? So that's a question, and I'm paraphrasing that.
Okay. So I mean, that's exactly kind of what we were covering in this whole webinar. The many sort of paths, but I think the top 2 or 3 would be the maturity of the offering, being the oldest, largest, most well-developed cloud, that is, best uptime I don't want to get into exact numbers, but it's a known fact that from a stability and resilience standpoint, AWS is just, stands apart and is just best. And we see the other pieces are, a lot of licensing freedom that AWS gives you to be able to structure, how you move your infrastructure makes it very, very cost effective, even more so from the OEM itself, which is interesting because there's no conflict of interest really in the OEM trying to upgrade licensing. So I'm not going to say more than that, but yeah, those are the three sort of core reasons. Anil, did I cover them, or do we need to add something to that?
No, I think that was very succinct, and that's what we were looking at in terms of, even the question said, just a couple of reasons would do. They probably didn't want to hear the recording all over again.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one's interesting. Not exactly related, but I still want to take that up in terms of saying, how would you architect for low bandwidth scenarios? And this, the gentleman Samir has has mentioned, in some geographies bandwidth might be an issue. I am more interested in, if you have faced customers, maybe in healthcare or somewhere where they were at remote locations and bandwidth was an issue, and how would you architect for that?
So I'll give you an example, and I'll let Ashish cover after this example. We have built and we have a telemedicine platform also, which obviously because it's designed to work in remote locations, so it has a fallback. I mean, I'm just giving one example, and Ashish can cover. Basically, it'll start with an HD full data connection, try to keep renegotiating and keep kind of falling back in terms of bandwidth usage and dropping. First, it'll kind of do a low-res video, then it'll drop audio quality, and fallback is just going to plain simple chat. So again, depending on what application, what scenario, you're able to kind of reduce the functionality of the application and limit it to make sure that you're covering the core experience and kind of downsizing the amount of data that is being used. But Ashish, any other strategies that you perhaps like to cover for this?
Yeah, so as Gautam mentioned, basically depending upon the application, so if it's like a video audio calling application, you have to have a fallback like this, as Gautam mentioned. But if it's just a content piece, over there we have to we leverage CloudFront edge locations basically over there, so that we serve the content from very near where the customer is. So that's how. And obviously, I mean, I would not say that only the cloud. We have to have a smart application which should be basically built in a way so that depending upon the bandwidth, we serve only specific and relevant data to the customer. That's how we basically take care of these things.
Yeah, I think cloud probably would enable those kind of architecture rather than be an hindrance.
Absolutely.
So I have, we're probably nearing the time. So just maybe next couple of questions. So guys, if you have questions, just let's keep them here. So this one's from Rahul. And what are the pitfalls that you've identified during your journey for migration? How did you handle that, given the constraints, within your constraints of your migration? Common pitfalls that you may have faced. What are the?
I think you're better qualified to answer this, in my opinion. So, what are the major issues that we see? I mean, they're obviously from a business issue. There's that side of it which I'm more accustomed to handling in terms of expectation handling, in terms of having a key stakeholder. So the production team is very aligned to what the objectives of the company are. So the alignment part is one big one, to make sure there is an organizational level alignment to the goal and what we're trying to do and keeping that realistic. I think that very often becomes a hindrance. But from a technical standpoint, I'd let Ashish cover some of those points.
So yeah, other than those challenges, I would say whenever we start migration, although we take help from those mature tools to understand the network communication, to understand the dependency, but sometimes what we see that there is some or the other legacy application running which hits the application, and we get to know that during the migration. So I mean, once the workload is on the cloud, that particular legacy application is trying to connect back to the on-prem environment, although our network doesn't say that, or that particular application is not being used very regularly. So during the assessment period, we never got a ping between those two applications. So I mean, that generally happens, and then after once we are on the cloud, that particular application start pinging back to the on-prem. So I mean, those are few of the things that we generally face. And then after that, I would say generally it happens around the legacy application only. It's not the networking, not around the VPC designing and all. But yeah, it happens at the application level, I would say.
Right. That's keen observation. And I think we'll take the last one. This one's from Vidur, and this is again, slightly different question in terms of the thoughts or experiences. So Vidur is soliciting thoughts and experiences on-premise plus hybrid infra, and what conditions have usually led to this, and what's the remedial action, or what's the action that you take typically when you encounter a hybrid infra.
I don't think you need to counter hybrid infra. You have to see why it exists and if there is any business reason for it to exist. Like even AWS is Outpost, right, which is sort of hybrid in the sense that it's on-prem connected to the cloud. So that's the right way of doing hybrid infra. So you have to see why there is hybrid infrastructure, and then basis the goals of the company, then you kind of move to solve for that, right? So that's what I think. Why it comes to be is because typically, a company will start its cloud journey. It'll be on-prem, high sort of infra kind of model, and it'll start moving applications. But somewhere, like I mentioned earlier, alignment will be lost. There'll be resistance internally from moving to the cloud. So you'll have partially sittings, on the cloud or not. And sometimes it gets even worse. You have 2 or 3 OEMs, some on, and then some still being on infra. So it becomes quite a little bit of a mess. So those are the reasons why it usually happens. Sometimes applications can't be moved because they just will not work on the cloud without significant modernization exercise, hence the term. Those are, I think, sort of reasons. Ashish, would you like to add anything here?
No, I think you have covered this nicely. Okay.
Right. Okay. So guys, we're almost on the time. So Gautam, Vedant, Ashish, thanks a lot for sharing your insights. A wonderful session. I think you've given us a good idea about not just migrations, Microsoft, but also modernization. So that's what I liked about it. So thanks for that. And also for our audience, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening in. You've been very patient audience, and thanks for your questions as well. You've made it interactive for us. I certainly enjoyed it, and hope you had an enjoyable and informative session. Right. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.